Good evening and welcome. My name is Kostas Sideridis, and I'm the president of the Alpha Omega Council. We are a 100-member strong nonprofit philanthropic organization based here in Boston, Massachusetts, and we were founded back in 1976. Our mission is to promote patriotism to the United States, to cultivate the ideals of Hellenism by supporting various scholarly, athletic, medical, charitable, scientific, literary, religious, and educational activities throughout New England and the United States. We also foster fellowship amongst our members, our Philhellenes in the Boston area, throughout the greater Hellenic community, and the next generation of Greek Americans. I would like to thank all of you for attending this evening's lecture. It is truly a pleasure. 200 years ago, the Greek nation rose to defeat the Ottoman Empire after 400 years of Turkokratia, as we say. On this historic and momentous occasion of the Greek Revolution bicentennial, I have the utmost honor and privilege to welcome our honorary guests. The Ambassador of Greece to the United States, Mrs. Alexandra Papadopoulou, and of course, our keynote speaker, Ambassador Nicholas Burns. I'd like to thank them both for honoring us with their presence at this evening. Once again, welcome, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's lecture presentation. Costa?
Hey, thank you, Costa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Our Socrates Speaker Series is honored to have both of our guests, as Costa introduced so humbly. I'd like to introduce Ambassador Nicholas Burns. Ambassador Burns is the Goodman Professor of the Practice of Diplomacy and International Relations at Harvard Kennedy School. He is faculty chair of the Future of Diplomacy Project and also the Project on Europe and the Transatlantic Relationship at the Kennedy School's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. Mr. Burns is Executive Director of the Aspen Strategy Group and the Aspen Security Forum. He is Senior Counselor at the Cohen Group. He is Chairman of the Board of Our Generation Speaks, which seeks to bring together young Palestinians and Israelis in common purpose. Mr. Burns served in the United States government for 27 years as a career Foreign Service officer. He was Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs between the years of 2005 and 2008. He was U.S. Ambassador to NATO between 2001 and 2005, U.S. Ambassador to Greece, 1997 and 2001, and State Department spokesperson between 1995 and 1997. He worked at the National Security Council as Senior Director for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasian Affairs, Special Assistant to President Clinton, and Director of the Soviet Affairs for President George H.W. Bush. Mr. Burns served in the American Consulate General in Jerusalem, where he coordinated U.S. economic assistance to the Palestinian people in the West Bank, and before that, at the American embassies in Egypt and Mauritania. He earned a bachelor's degree in history from Boston College and a master's degree in international relations from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. And now, it's my honor to introduce Ambassador Nicholas Burns. Sir.
Costa, thank you so much. That was a very kind introduction. I appreciate it very much. It's good to see so many friends as I scrolled through the Zoom, people I've known for a number of years. I was reflecting today when I was thinking about being with you on this really important day that I actually spoke to the Alpha and Omega Council in May of 2001 when I was in my last months as ambassador to Greece. And I remember one of my personal heroes, Governor Mike Dukakis, was there that evening and said a few words. And I think my first vote when I turned 18 was to vote for Mike Dukakis for governor. So I've always been with the Greek Americans, as you know. So it's really good to be back with all of you. I really respect very much the work and the legacy and the history of the Alpha and Omega Council. I know how important you are in Boston and in Massachusetts. I know what an important bridge the Greek American community is. When I was in Greece for 3.5 years, we had on our staircase, as people came into our living room, we had a major photo of Fenway Park. And when the Greeks would look at it quizzically, I'd say, this is our cathedral in Ivostoni, our cathedral, called Fenway Park. And the Greeks would remind me, given the legacy of Boston's relationship with Greece, Ivostoni ine I Athena tis Amerikis. Boston is the Athens of America. And you know, all of us who dislike the Yankees intensely and dislike the Rangers and the Jets and the Giants, if you're a Boston sports fan, understand that Boston really originated as a great city in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, really as the American Athens, center for scholarship. Our great universities founded here, Harvard in 1636, center for learning and knowledge. And we like to think in Boston that we're the real inheritors of Greek culture. Let New York be Rome, because that's what New York became, right? But Boston has this tradition. And when I received the invitation, I was very, very honored, because this is a great day. I know for all of you who are Greek Americans, and this is the bicentennial. This is the celebration of the extraordinary and improbable struggle of the Greek people against the mighty Ottoman Empire, which they defeated in a 4-year war. And you all know that history better than I do. But what a great day for Greece. And what a great day for Greek Americans to be together with an Irish American, but a Philhellene like me. If we think of the legacy of Samuel Gridley Howe, whose house still stands, of course, on Beacon Hill in Boston, and Edward Everett. I mean, these Americans who made this major bet, some of them to travel halfway around the world to support what was then a rather small country in a distant part of the Ottoman Empire against this mighty 500-year empire. What a miraculous, miraculous event it was. And I followed the events today, as I'm sure you did. The flyovers of the aircraft this morning in Athena. My friend Jeff Pyatt, who's been, I have to tell you, an absolutely outstanding ambassador for the United States to Greece. Jeff was tweeting out tributes to all the Americans who were involved in the festivities. I've talked to my friend Yana Angelopoulos, who of course is coordinating the bicentennial for the Greek state, for the Greek president and prime minister. All of us who love Greece can be really proud of this day. And I was conscious of this history when I was ambassador. You have to be. Part of the job of being ambassador is really two jobs. One, you're the president's personal representative to the Greek state, to the president of Greece, the prime minister, the cabinet, the Voulis, but you're also ambassador to the Greek people. And so I always was conscious of the fact that I had those two jobs. And I'm being very sincere in saying in that second job of trying to be ambassador to the Greek people, I had so much support from you, from the Alpha and Omega, from the AHEPA, from all the fraternal Greek American organizations. Every place I go in Greece, there's a Greek American organization of Greek Americans who come from that place, in the Peloponnese, or up in Kastoria, or in the Thessaloniki. And that support was really important. I was also conscious of the fact that I was just, I was one in a number of American ambassadors. I'd taken the baton from my predecessor, Tom Niles. I would, like a relay race around the track in the ancient stadium in Greece, and I would hand that baton off to my successor. I was conscious of how great our history was with Greece. What a great friend America has been to Greece. If you think of the Greek Revolution of 1821 and the Americans who responded to it. If we think of, in the last century, FDR's great support for the valiant effort of the Greeks to preserve their homeland against the Nazi invasion, the incredible invasion to Crete, and then of the Greek mainland and the rest of the Greek islands. The incredible support that President Truman gave to Greece in Greece's time of need during the Greek Civil War. And this was a perilous subject for me to discuss when I was in Greece, because even in the late 90s, I was President Clinton's ambassador. And into 2001, a significant percentage of the Greek population, minority percentage, but significant. Well, their fathers, mothers, grandparents had been on the losing side of the Greek Civil War. A lot of their children were out demonstrating against me. If they were members of the Communist Party of Greece or members of some of the other anti-American groups. But I think we can be so proud of what FDR tried to do. And then Truman in supporting the Greek state and Greek democracy. You know, the Truman Doctrine, the famous Truman Doctrine, was really written for Greece and Turkey, ironically. And President Truman said, I will not allow a democratic ally of the United States to go communist, as the communists were contesting those democracies after World War II. And that led to General Van Fleet's mission, the American general, and he helped the Greek government turn the tide of that civil war. You all know this history better than me, in favor of democracy against communism. And I used to spar with Greek communists. I remember going to see Mrs. Papariga, who was the chairman of the Communist Party of Greece. I felt she was in the Vouli, in the Greek parliament. I felt I should go see all the parties in the parliament. And she was very cool to me. But when I asked her about her children, she had two, I think, daughters in their 20s, and both of them had gone to study in the United States. So that was a nice side of that relationship, that even a Greek communist would recognize the importance of the United States. But that Truman Doctrine was so important, President Truman, in supporting the Greek people. Greece coming into NATO in 1952 to become part of the US-led alliance. President Obama's support for Greece, which was critical during the debt crisis of 2010 and 11. You know, some of those European countries seriously considered thinking about ejecting Greece from the European Union. And President Obama intervened several times with Chancellor Merkel and the other European leaders to say, what would the European Union be without Greece, one of its original members? And frankly, the country that gave Europe its democratic tradition. So we've been a good friend. But I thought I should tell you I had to fight this history when I was ambassador. Before President Clinton came on a state visit in 1999, we're so proud of that, the Greek communists went out in the dark of night and they literally cut down the statue of Harry Truman that had been built by a HEPA on Vasileios Sophias, the main avenue in Greece, and they cut it down. And I went to see the Greek government, the PASOK government at the time. I said, this is a terrible thing. We can't have the president of the United States come and have this statue of one of his predecessors, Harry Truman, in a warehouse because it's been sawed off by the Greek Communist Party. And they said, there's nothing we can do about it. And I appealed to the mayor of Athens, Dimitris Avramopoulos. He said, I'll do something about it. And he retrieved the statue from whatever government warehouse it had been thrown into, and he had the statue put back up. Because Avramopoulos said, look, we're always going to be friends with the United States of America. That battle over history was contested throughout my time in Greece. There was a statue of General Van Fleet, the American general who had helped the Greek democracy to win the Civil War in the late 1940s. That statue was in Kastoria up in the northern part of Greece. I went to visit the nomarch and the mayor of Kastoria when the statue had been taken down and thrown into Lake Kastoria by the Greek communists. And the nomarch and mayor said, oh, we're terribly sorry, Ambassador, what a tragedy. There's nothing we can do. I said, Mr. Mayor, you can dredge the lake. I mean, they couldn't have thrown it more than 10 feet into your lake, and it's not a very deep lake. And with a little bit of that kind of persuasion and some support from the greatest Greek American in the US Senate, the late Senator Paul Sarbanes, that statue was retrieved from Lake Kastoria, and that was put back up. And then we had to fight another battle, and that was the monument to the Philhellenes of 1821. And I don't know how many of you remember that. There was a beautiful, beautiful 19th century obelisk with the names of all the great American Philhellenes who went and supported the Greeks. And when I arrived in Athens, it was completely covered in vines in a traffic circle near the temple of Olympian Zeus, if you know where that is in Athena. And you couldn't see the statue from the road. You had to kind of go in and bushwhack your way in to get through all the vines. And I went to Avramopoulos, again, the mayor of Athens. I said, Mr. Mayor, this is America's greatest gift to Greece, the Philhellenes. We've got to do something. He said, I'll do something. He had the statue moved to the little park across the street from the American ambassador's residence. A lot of you have been to that residence. If you haven't, please go and visit our ambassador. And we had it, and he cleaned it all up. And we had a ceremony with the Greek American community in 2001 where we rededicated that statue. I'm not even through yet. There's one more battle of the statues. We felt that George Marshall needed to be honored because it was Marshall's plan that was a lifeline to so many poor Greeks in the late 1940s and the early 1950s. I remember talking to Nick Gage about this. Nick became a very good friend when I was in Greece, and I always relied on his good judgment. And, you know, the power of the Marshall Plan in Europe, especially in Greece, to help people in need who are really suffering. It was one of America's greatest gifts. And so AHEPA came through again, and AHEPA raised funds, and we had a Greek sculptor sculpt a beautiful statue of George Marshall. We put it inside the embassy gates because we'd learned our lesson with all these statues being cut down by the Communist Party all over Greece. Inside the gates, we put it up, a beautiful statue. So when you go by the front of the embassy on Vasilia Sophias, there's Marshall. And lo and behold, during the great controversy over Kosovo in 1999, when we had 53 demonstrations, some of them quite violent, organized by the Greek left against the United States, that statue was pelted with animal blood and eggs and all sorts of things, but they couldn't take it down because it was inside the embassy gates. So what's the moral of this story? Sometimes you have to defend your history. You have to be proud of America's legacy in Greece. I know all of you are, I am too. And I've marveled often at how we fought the battle of the statues against the Greek extreme left. Let me conclude on a much more positive note. And that is today, and how proud we can be of the relationship since really I left as ambassador. It's had its ups and downs, as any relationship does. No country, no two countries, even as close as Greece or the United States or Canada or the United States or the US and UK, are going to be without our quarrels from time to time. But I must say, I think the relationship now between the United States and Greece is as good as it's been, I think, since the 1950s. It's been a confluence of things. It's been the resurgence of Greece after the terrible debt crisis, and the return, not of a perfect Greek economy, but I think a return of pride, that the Greeks suffered through the worst and survived it. It's been the fact that we've seen a significant level increase in American trade and American investment with Greece. Another factor is the fact that the United States doesn't always have to be antiseptically neutral when Greece and Turkey have an argument. And you've seen President Trump and Secretary Mike Pompeo took the side of Greece on the fact that the Turks were unnecessarily, and I think outrageously, trying to intimidate the Greeks by overflights in the Eastern Aegean Sea of islands that are clearly part of the Greek state and Greek territorial integrity, and because Turkey's been trying to impede Greece and Cyprus from prospecting for natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean, so east of Crete, clearly in Greek and Cypriot waters. And it's been great to see, frankly, I was not a President Trump supporter, but I was happy to see his administration support Greece. I've been very happy to see President Joe Biden do the same. I don't know if you've seen the taped video message that President Biden made. It's out on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. You can find it, I'm sure, on Google. President Biden taped a beautiful tribute to Greece on its bicentennial, which I saw today. President Biden, during the campaign, criticized the Turkish government for having taken that beautiful, beautiful symbol of religiosity, Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, originally, of course, a Greek Orthodox church, And after 84 years of it being a kind of a neutral institution, open to all faiths, the Turks, of course, made it a mosque again. President Biden, candidate Biden, criticized that. And Joe Biden is someone who knows this issue of Greece and our relationship with it. He knows it cold. He's always been a supporter of Greece since he's been in public life. And I think we've had in both President Biden and President Trump and President Obama, and George W. Bush, I know that too, great friends of Greece who stood up for Greece. So the fact that Greece has come back economically, the fact that the United States is not afraid to call a spade when the Turks act outrageously, which they have done on multiple occasions in the last few years, and specifically the fact that our military relationship is so strong. I don't know if you saw last weekend, just a couple of days ago, that we sent, the Sixth Fleet sent the USS Eisenhower, our aircraft carrier, and all of its associated ships through the Med to Suda Bay in Crete. And Prime Minister Mitsotakis flew down and he went on board the Eisenhower with Ambassador Pyatt. And I have a firsthand knowledge of this because one of my former students, Captain Paul Campagna, is commanding officer of the Eisenhower. And he sent me a wonderful email describing how proud he was to show this incredible aircraft carrier, a symbol of American military power and American interest in Greece, to Prime Minister Mitsotakis and to Ambassador Pyatt. I just received the email yesterday. So I've been thinking, as I thought about you and the Alpha and Omega Council, of all these wonderful links that all of us have with Greece. It is such a positive time in the US-Greece relationship. The communists, they've kind of disappeared a little bit. They're no longer major actors. And we can be proud that the United States is friends, I think, with a wide variety of people on the political spectrum in Greece. And I've told Ambassador Pyatt, who's a close friend of mine, many times, I said, Jeff, the relationship is so much healthier than it was when I was fighting the Battle of the Statues in Greece 20 years ago. So I wanted just to pay tribute to our relationship. I believe it's a very important relationship for our future. It always will be. We're a democratic country. We believe in democracy and human freedom and the rule of law. And we all know that the antecedents of that are in ancient Greece. I'm still on the board of the American School of Classical Studies. That's a consortium of 130 American universities who run the archaeological digs for the United States in cooperation with the Greek Ministry of Culture and the Greek Archaeological Service. And it's amazing to see what we've done, we Americans, since the 1870s in ancient Corinth, to see the city where St. Paul preached to the Corinthians, to see that dug out, to see where one of the original Olympic Games in Nemea was dug out. And of course, they have recreated those Olympic Games, and my wife and I actually ran in those games barefoot in a creek, because that's where the ancients did it, in a Greek Hyton in the year 2000. Such an honor to go to that, to go to Crete, which is just such a great island. For those of you, I'm looking at, I can always tell by the last names who's from Crete. For those of you who are from Crete, we had a dig that began there in 1899, the first major archaeological dig led by a woman, Harriet Boyd Hawes. And we've been digging in East Crete and have a marvelous center there. And of course, the crown jewel is what my friend John Camp has been doing since 1965. He's the director of the American dig at the ancient Greek marketplace, the Agora, just below the Acropolis. They've dug out Socrates' school. They've dug out the ancient Greek city, and they've been doing that since the late 19th century. We can be, the Gennadius Library is another jewel in the crown if you've been there in Kolonaki. We can be so proud of our relationship. And I, as a Bostonian, am honored to be with you tonight and to celebrate our common dedication to the future of our alliance with Greece. So Kostas, thanks so much for inviting me. Really a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Ambassador Burns. I'm going to turn it over to our president, Kostas Sideridis, at this point.
Ambassador Burns, thank you so much for your kind words and your words of wisdom. It also gives me a sincere honor and pleasure to welcome our current ambassador, Mrs. Her Excellency Alexandra Papadopoulou, who was nice enough to spare a few moments of her very busy schedule. I believe she was with the President Biden a few moments ago. So, Ms. Ambassador, thank you so much. It's a huge honor for us to have both of you two distinguished diplomats amongst our folks here. And again, I can't thank you enough. And Mrs. Ambassador, thank you again. And you honor us with your presence as you have before. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sideridis, and I thank the Alpha Omega Council for organizing this event tonight. Yes, it's correct. The meeting, the Zoom meeting between the President of the United States and leaders of the Greek American community, of course, it had to be a limited number, not all of them were there, was really emotional. It was touching. It was, I saw and I read the message of the president to the Greek people today. And I also was present when we saw his message to the, after the doxology, the liturgy, the service at the Greek cathedral. And there was their video message to the Greek American community. And that was very touching too. And of course, I talked to the Prime Minister after his discussion with the president, that it was an amazing discussion. But to see the president together with people, members of the Greek American community, and having this personal touch, this personal relationship, it's like seeing somebody. I don't know if I can say that to a person like the president, for a person like the president of the United States, but it was like family. That he understood Greece and he felt for Greece, and it was a unique feeling. And I couldn't help but think why this is the special, we have the special relationship between Greece and the United States, to what this somehow sometimes difficult relationship. And I joined the Zoom when Ambassador Burns was talking about the difficulties in his tenure, during his tenure in Athens, and I'm old enough to remember those times. Yes, the relationship went through some ups and downs, like a family relationship. And usually family relationships, when they are in trouble, they're really in trouble, because we tend to put emotional elements to our to our views and to how we approach issues. But this relationship is deep. Is historical. In the 200 years of Greek independence and 200 something plus years of American independence, the two countries never fought against each other. They always fought side by side. And both countries are based on the same values and principles and ideals. The American Revolution based on ancient Greek principles of democracy, human rights, rule of law. The Greek Revolution inspired by the achievements of the American Revolution. There was always like two partners exchanging without maybe not doing so, but really there was a constant exchange of ideas between Greece and the United States. And then there is the huge presence of the Greek American community. I cannot see any other factor having contributed to this relationship more than the Greek American community, which embodies what is beautiful about Greece, what Hellenism stands for, and imbuing this feeling and this spirit into the American society. The relationship between Greece and the United States is not only political, it's something deeper. It's also educational. I'm a product of this relationship. I came as a young student to study in the United States on a Fulbright scholarship. And at the time when I came, it was so unusual for somebody to be able to come to the US. It was too far, too expensive. And the Fulbright program gave me an opportunity which was unique. It was transformative. And people like me, when we went back to Greece, we were the live embodiment of what was so good in the American educational system. Also, like all Greek families, I remember the times when our relatives were coming and visiting us from the United States to Greece. And those were days that it was not so easy to communicate. We didn't have television. It was only long letters, exchange of letters, and we didn't have the images, but the US was something mythical, the land of freedom, the land in which everybody can dream, something that all of us wanted that our country aspire to do the same thing, that our country aspires to this ideal. So I was raised, I belong to the generation that was raised thinking of the US as something mythical and still so approachable. Of course, time went by, difficult times came to the relationship, but now that you can travel back and forth, we have a very clear and concrete idea about the US and the US about Greece also. So our relationship now is more secure. The foundation is stronger, it's deeper, and it's more, we're conscious about why we are together. We know that we think the same, we feel the same, we share the same values, and we share the same dreams as people. And I think there's nothing better, there is no more guarantee for a wonderful future in the Greek-American relations. And Ambassador Burns, it's really an honor to see you and listen to part only of your speech. I remember you as an ambassador in Greece. I can tell you how much you are loved and appreciated in Greece. It was a difficult time, but you dealt with those times in such a wonderful manner. Very dignified, very understanding, very political, and you're considered as a real friend in Greece. And I know that you're visiting Greece, and I know that you still have friends there. And I'm sure you have this feeling, you get this feeling that you are part of us, you are one of us. Thank you all. Happy anniversary to all of us. You know, Greece is not only a state, it's an idea. Hellenism is something bigger than a geographical term. Hellenism is just this, what we think about us. So being Hellenic doesn't have to be Greek necessarily, but it's part of the same culture. Happy anniversary day to Greece. Χρόνια πολλά σε όλους τους Έλληνες στην Ελλάδα και σε όλο τον κόσμο.
Χρόνια πολλά.
Ms. Ambassador, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you for honoring us with your presence. Ambassador Burns, I know any comments? I hate if you'd like to respond or say a few words to the ambassador. Again, I'm kind of new having two ambassadors go at it, so forgive me. This is kind of a huge honor for me, so forgive me.
Oh, I just want to thank the ambassador for being with us on this great day in Greek history, the bicentennial. Thank her for being such a great friend of the United States of America and for being someone who's uniting us along with Ambassador Jeff Pyatt between these two countries. And I think the ambassador is right. There's something so special about Hellenism and the Greek idea of life and of art and of history. And it's something that we all appreciate very much, Ambassador. We appreciate the job you're doing here. And you're right about President Biden. He's a real Philhellene. I think he has a real understanding of Greece. So thank you, Madam Ambassador.
Thank you. He has this feeling of Hellenism, like you, like Ambassador Pyatt.
Sosta, Symphono.
Sosta.
Zito Elas.
Thank you.
What a connection to the both ambassadors. And you know, Ambassador Burns, Kyria Papadopoulou, it's interesting. Ambassador Burns brought up that the Prime Minister, Mitsotakis, was actually on the USS Eisenhower in Suda. What we were fortunate enough to learn this year from our Consul General here in Boston, interestingly enough, the USS Constitution had an extremely important guest on it, what we consider actually one of the founding fathers of the Greek state, and that's Theodoros Kolokotronis. And I'm hoping, Mr. Burns, maybe with your help, we could actually find the ship's registry that may list his name and other Hellenes on the ship that we can bring to the forefront. It would be a great honor, sir, if you can pull your diplomatic strings a bit. And we'll have this, the Consul General maybe comment later on that as well, but the exchange is very welcome between Kyria Papadopoulou and yourself. And one thing I'd like to throw up there, because we talk about America's Philhellenes, and we know of many, at least a dozen or so from the Greek War of Independence that participated. And we gave honor to one in Massachusetts, but we have them from Rhode Island, we have them from Vermont, and a number of New Englanders. How do we feel today about America's Philhellenes rising up and assisting the birthplace of democracy against the current threats by our neighbors of the East, if you will.
Well, I'm happy to comment, but I think we should ask the ambassador to comment first, and I'll follow her.
Most definitely. Kyria Papadopoulou.
You know, I want to start answering a different to my reply in a different way. You know, I think Greece is not turning against anybody, and there is no country that wants more than Greece a very good relationship with Turkey. For us, a stable, democratic, and prosperous Turkey in the European Union and NATO would have been a dream. But it's not what we want, it's what we get. And the problem is not what we want from Turkey, is what Turkey wants for itself. Nobody wants a neighbor who is unstable, who is erratical, and a dictatorship. We want a Westerner neighbor. Unfortunately, we don't see that. Unfortunately, we see, I would say, an erratic behavior, and definitely a country that is far from the democratic ideals and far from, respect Western ideas. So the number one thing that I would, if somebody asks me what you want the US to do, is just to try to put some reason into Turkey. Try to tell them, to make them understand that the way they're going is not good for anybody. It's not good for Greece. It's not good for the region. It's not good for the United States. It's not good for Turkey. Who am I to tell Turkey what is good for them? But as a neighbor and as a friend, why not? We have to live together. I would like them to come back to their reason, to come back to the fact that today's differences are not solved by weapons. They're not solved by threat. They're not solved by the use of threat. This is not the way you go about in the 21st century. You sit down, you discuss. The Greek government said, okay, we have a difference about the limitation of maritime borders. Let's discuss it. We don't agree. Let's refer it to the International Court of Justice. You don't send your fleet down the Aegean Sea and threaten Greek inhabited islands. This is absurd. This is, it's unthinkable in my mind. So the United States, as the cornerstone of the Western alliance and as the biggest country, democratic, rule of law, human rights, I think what I want is what I see. I have to say, I see it right now. Go to the Turks and say, please get back to your senses.
Ambassador Burns.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. It's what a tragic history this is. Our embassy in Athens is in Ambolokipi. And Ambolokipi, I think, as the ambassador knows, that was a neighborhood that a lot of the refugees from 1921, 22, 23, they lost everything, the Greek refugees, and they came to Ambolokipi. And so this was palpable where we were living, my wife and our 3 daughters were. I remember in 1999, there was a huge earthquake, terrible earthquake in Turkey. And George Papandreou, who was then the foreign minister of Greece, I think a very good foreign minister, very effective, he decided with Prime Minister Simitis that Greece would send assistance. And they sent Greek first responders and Greek doctors and a lot of Greek aid. And the Turks were really touched by it. And 7 or 8 months later, there was a big earthquake in Athena. And I was in it. And I'll never forget it. It's the only earthquake I've ever been in. And it was terrifying. And there was loss of life. And the Turks sent support to Greece. And there was this earthquake diplomacy, this moment where you thought, well, maybe the 2 countries might come together because they'd helped each other. And as the ambassador said, she's right. Greece will always live next door to Turkey, and Turkey will always live next door to Greece. And it's such a tragedy now when I think about the promise of earthquake diplomacy to the current situation. And since I'm out of government and a private citizen, I'll just say what's on my mind. President Erdogan is a great disappointment to the United States. He's an autocrat. He is someone who is unnecessarily trying to intimidate the Greek people and the Greek state. I've been very pleased to see how often, I think, Ambassador, I don't know if you were here when I said, Joe Biden has stood up for the Greeks, as has Donald Trump. And I'm proud that our country has done that. I'm proud that the French government has been such a good friend to Greece as well. I mean, when two countries have a dispute, it's not always the case that they're both equally wrong or equally responsible. I see Greece as just trying to defend its borders, and Turkey with its overflights and with its fleet trying to intimidate the Greek state. Turkey, there are more generals in jail in Turkey and more journalists than any other country in the world. It's become a dictatorship. They've imported a Russian air defense system, the S-400, and we in NATO, Greece and the United States, we can't have them integrate that air defense system with the NATO system because it's like letting a cancerous agent loose in the bloodstream. There have been so many, and the outrage of Turkey, what it's done to the Kurds, and how disrespectful they've been to the American military that's trying to help the Kurds in Syria, and the problems that Turkey has created with almost all of its neighbors. This is a real problem for us. You know, we can't kick Turkey out of NATO. Do you know why? NATO operates by consensus. So any decision requires unanimous vote. And so if any of us wanted to kick Turkey out, we couldn't because the Turks would say no. So we have to, I think, isolate the Turks a little bit in NATO and hope that the Turkish people, some future president, comes back to democracy in Turkey. But in the meantime, you know, when to stand up and to say to the Turks, you can't intimidate Greece. You have to, we know where the borders are and you do too. And you have to be respectful. That's what I would say. It's a very, very difficult question.
It was.
May I add something, please, to what the ambassador just said? And he's absolutely right. You cannot intimidate the region. You know, right now, Turkey is intimidating the whole region, all the way from the Gulf to the Caucasus. They are on their way to create a sphere of influence that in their mind is neo-Ottoman. You know, this region has suffered a lot through the ages. There is a lot of blood in this region. And in the last 100 years, there was a balance. You know, nobody lost everything, nobody won everything. We lost something and we won something. And there was a balance. And we accepted, this is it. All of us did that. Not only Greece and Turkey, previous Turkey, not today's Turkey, and Egypt and everybody, you name them. And suddenly it's somebody coming and saying, no, wait, 100 years, oh yeah, I have to think about it now. And I'm not so sure that I want what happened 100 years ago. You know, a lot of times I say that in Europe, we celebrate French-German reconciliation after the Second World War. But another big success story in Europe is the Greek-Bulgarian reconciliation. We tend to forget that we fought over 1,000 years with Bulgarians, and we are the best friends. We have accepted what happened. We let the historians debate what happened in the past, and we live perfectly well together. And if you go in the summer in the Greek, in northern Greece, you see more Bulgarians than Greeks. And if you go in the winter in the mountains of Bulgaria, you see more Greeks than Bulgarians. We reached the point that in the summer, we have Bulgarian policemen helping the Greek police in the south, in the Greeks. And in the winter, we send Greek policemen helping Bulgarian policemen in the south of Bulgaria. So yes, this is history. A lot of things have happened in history. We're not going to relive it. It's, you know, why relive it? Okay, nobody's happy 100%. Of course, nobody's happy 100% happy. But now, 100 years later, to remember that maybe this is not what you want. I wanted in my life. This is a recipe for disaster, especially in a region which is as volatile, as passionate, and as difficult as the greater Eastern Mediterranean.
May I add here? What's interesting is, and thank you very much. This is an incredible informational series here. I do want to bring up a point, which is an amazing point that was brought up earlier in the Greek radio station on Grecian Echoes by our president, that the White House celebrates two nationalities for freedom and for celebratory aspects, and that's the Greeks and the Irish, right? It's an amazing thing. Think about it, right? And when I think about that, and President Biden's words today were incredible, as the previous administrations, And we see the links between both countries, the birthplace of democracy and the American experiment that is the shining light on the hill, if you will, to the rest of the world. So with that said, what other impacts have you seen or influences from the Greek War of Independence, and maybe using that as an example to other nations that require an example of a democracy being born?
You know, Kostas, I think you were right to compare the American Revolution and the Greek Revolution, because along with the very short-lived French Revolution, these were the first times that people threw off empire and monarchy and proclaimed the ideals of freedom and independence and liberty. And of course, our founding fathers and founding mothers were all children, adults, people of the Enlightenment, and they read Greek and Latin. They learned Greek and Latin as young men in the 18th century. And we know, for instance, that Jefferson derived inspiration from ancient Greece. We know that for a fact. We know that Hamilton did. And these were the people who not only framed the Declaration of Independence, but the Constitution of the United States. So I see direct links from these two revolutions, ours, which began in Boston, in Lexington and Concord in 1775, and Greece's in 1821. They're almost twin revolutions against mighty empires. And if anybody had wanted to give odds at the beginning of each revolution, will the Americans or Greeks succeed? People would have bet against them. They would have bet on the empire. And yet sometimes, sometimes the tidal wave of justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme. That's Seamus Heaney, Joe Biden's favorite Irish poet, and mine too. We're both Irish Americans, President Biden and I. Sometimes hope and history can rhyme. I think what Heaney was trying to say, he was a professor at Harvard, trying to say is that people can dream big dreams and they're difficult to attain, but if you have the right on your side, and if you pull together, you can achieve great things. That's how I think about the Greek bicentennial and in 1821, and the Americans who came to their support.
Kyria Papadopoulou, your thoughts? I mean, if we look at the parallels, it's an amazing thing.
Yes, Jefferson was inspired by ancient Greece, and Socrates, who was one of the spiritual leaders of the Greek Revolution, had a very regular correspondence with Jefferson. In the time leading to the Greek Revolution, the correspondence between Jefferson and Socrates is a fascinating chapter. There is another point also, the interconnection between the Greek Revolution and abolitionism, for the slavery in the United States. The Philhellenic movement during the War of Independence was later a great part of the abolitionism, of the whole movement against the slavery. And we have also the story of Fisk, one of the most fascinating personalities, Greek-American, chaplain in the American Navy. His Greek name, I don't remember, the American name is Fisk, who was not only instrumental in the abolitionist movement, but also he was instrumental in the feminist movement. Because the idea of freedom is universal. And this is something that unites Irish and Greeks, this quest for freedom.
Yes.
We both have suffered from very powerful empires. And we managed to keep our identity and our free spirit. And this is the underlining, what is the underpinning of the relationship. It's something that unites us. It's freedom. The indomitable spirit of people who want to live free as free men, and we will not give up despite the suffering, despite the sacrifices, despite everything. In Dublin is called the Athens of the North, and as I'm a Greek diplomat, so I worked in the European Union, and it's fascinating. The Irish and the Greeks usually have similar positions on everything. We come from the south and the north, and we most of the times we say the same things, we go the same way. It's an amazing story, but there is this underlying cultural point that nothing is more. It's the spirit. That's the beginning and the end, and it was really honoring for my country and all Greeks, regardless of where they live. The fact that the President of the United States showed this feeling, and I'm sure it was a sincere feeling. He understands what it means to be Greek Hellene. It's because maybe he's of Irish descent, I don't know, but it's because he has a lot of Greek American friends, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It was so obvious and so emotional, and it created deep emotions to us, and believe me, he created a lot of deep emotions in Athens.
Very nice. Ambassador Burns, may I ask, we're running against the clock for everyone here, sir, and Kyria Papadopoulou, as long as you guys want to stay, but are there any final words you want to add? This was, for us, thank you very much, but any final words from your side?
Just two final words. One is to continue what the ambassador just said. When my wife Libby and I and our three daughters were living in Athena, we took a trip to Ireland in 2000 because my grandmother and grandfather had come as teenagers from Ireland, like so many Irish did. And we found my grandfather's house in Clare on the Atlantic Ocean. It was an incredible experience. And it got me to thinking to exactly what the ambassador just said. The Greeks and the Irish living on the edges of Europe, one in the west, one in the southeast, smaller countries. They both have rose up and they threw off their oppressor, Greece in 1821, Ireland in 1921, exactly a century later. The Easter Rebellion against British rule and the creation of modern Ireland. What are their cultural characteristics? Both religion, fundamentally important. Maybe the two most religious peoples in Europe right now are the Greeks and the Irish. What else is important to both of them? Poetry and music. And I think there's so many connections between my people, the Irish, and the Greeks. I always felt close to Greece. My kids did. My daughter was married, and two of her Greek friends were in bridesmaids. My youngest daughter just went to Thessaloniki to be the bridesmaid for her best Greek friend. We are interchangeable peoples in some ways. I wanted to say that, but what I really wanted to finish on, this is a time of hope. This is a time of hope. I admire so much Prime Minister Mitsotakis. I've known him since he was a student at Harvard. I knew his father very well. When I was in the White House, I was responsible for Greece when Prime Minister Mitsotakis Sr. was prime minister, and a very close friend of President George H.W. Bush, by the way, close personal friends. I think the current prime minister is extraordinarily smart, honest, sophisticated, and he's positioned Greece very nicely in the EU and in NATO. And I think that he and Joe Biden are going to be close colleagues. That's my prediction, Ambassador. And I've never felt so hopeful as I do now about our alliance and relationship. The ambassador and Jeff Pyatt are doing a great job of putting the two countries together. So what a great night to rejoice, we Bostonians, and to say Zito Elas, and to congratulate Greece, the Greek people, on their bicentennial. And I'm really honored to be with the Alpha and Omega Council. I can say many of you are friends, and thank you for the honor of inviting me tonight.
Ambassador, there's another couple of points that unite Irish and Greeks: the water, the sea, and the pain of immigration. All of us have relatives abroad.
Yes, exactly right.
And of course, now there is the Zoom and the travels. Okay, but years and years ago, your son was going to the US. Most probably, you will never see him again.
Right. You're exactly right. Can I say one more thing that unites us? When I arrived in Greece, I went to a basketball game, and there was a team with green uniforms and a shamrock.
Panathinaikos.
I said, Ime Panathinaikos, because I'm a Boston Celtics fan. Half of Greece loved me. The other half hated me because I wasn't Olympiakos or Ajax or whoever. But that's another thing. Love of sports. And Ime Panda Panathinaiko.
Ambassador,
It's an honor. It's an honor to see you, Ambassador. Real honor for me.
And to see you, Ambassador, and congratulations to you on the bicentennial.
Thank you very much.
both ambassadors, a sincere pleasure. This will be a night that Alpha Omega will not forget for many, many years, if ever. So again, on behalf of all of the Alpha Omegans, a sincere thank you. You honor us both with your presence tonight, your words of wisdom. What an amazing evening, and just the day itself was just such a pinnacle of being a Greek American. So again, I thank you both. You're very busy, and we just thank you again for all of your good words.
Thank you. Thank you.
Και εμείς
Χρόνια πολλά.
Χρόνια πολλά. Χρόνια πολλά.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Bye.
Γεια σας.
Yes. So if I may, I would like to thank a few people, but I would like to start with a very dear friend, someone who we've been working with since the day he got here. I spent all of today with him, and frankly, today's program was inspired by our very beloved Consul General. A few months ago, a few weeks ago, he reached out and suggested that we potentially look at a few speakers, and he recommended Ambassador Burns. And I can honestly say, he himself was able to get our current Ambassador Papadopoulou. So without further ado, Serato, on behalf of all of Alpha Omega, you are a partner. You are in many ways an Alpha Omegan, and we love working with you in your office. And what a beautiful day to spend with you. It was a huge honor. And again, thank you for arranging to have the ambassador here today. Actually, inspired both of them. So if you have a few moments, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, the honor and the pleasure is mine. The Alpha Omega Council has always been our my strongest partner in my mission here. Every year we work on so many projects, from the wreath ceremony to the educational activities, and I'm looking forward to continuing this cooperation. I congratulate you on a very successful event. And I'm really looking forward to to meeting you, to meeting the whole group in person again.
Well, Sato, thank you. Hopefully we didn't have an international incident tonight. Hopefully things went well. So it was a nice experience. Clearly we are not career diplomats. We're engineers, finance, and other medical folks, but we love to have this type of exposure. And it just, again, I keep on saying this, it's an honor and a privilege. So again, thank you, Sato, for all that you've done, and thank you for supporting this organization. And for
diplomacy, if I may say, diplomacy has changed and it is evolving, and we have new types of diplomacy, like public diplomacy, which requires that that you should be more open to discussions, to the public. Diplomacy is no longer executed only behind closed doors. With the social media, you can address directly public opinions, and taking part in this kind of discussions can only improve the debate and give opportunities for any diplomat to express his or her opinions. Congratulations on your work.
Councilor General, thank you so much. And that concludes our formal presentation. We can certainly reach out and have any questions that you folks would like to add to the chat line. But on a very proud day to be Greek, on a very momentous day that we celebrate 200 years of the Greek War of Independence, it's a fascinating moment in time, folks, and it's just such a pleasure to be here. And again, I keep on saying, thank you for allowing me to be a leader of this organization for this short time, and it's always a privilege. So any questions? I know our Council General probably has a few more things to attend to before the evening here, but any specific questions, please feel free to reach out. But Serato, final word.